Good evening. The time is 6:30. It's time to convene the Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole for Finance, Policy, Personnel and Appointments, Justice, and Social Services. Roll call, please.
Mitchell. Patterson.
Here.
Petrie.
Present.
Rector. Rosales.
Here.
Storr. Summers. Tinsley.
Present.
Anderson. Clemens. Clifford. Coert. Cruz. Esri.
Here.
Furtado. Goss.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Hartke. King. Marsh. McGuire. Weibel.
Here, we have a majority. We have a quorum. Seek approval of the agenda and the addenda. Moved by Esri, second by Goss. Discussion, see none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Seek approval of the minutes of February 7th, 2018, the County Administrative Evaluation Committee, and the February 13th, 2018 Committee of the Whole. Moved by Max, second by Rector. Discussion. See none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Public participation. We have one person, Dorothy, also known as Dottie Vera Weiss. I can call you Dottie still, can't I? Dr. Dottie. Sorry, Dr. Dottie. Thank you. Please turn on the microphone.
Good evening. I'm Dottie Vera Weiss, and as Pius said, I'm a physician, a retired physician, and been here in Urbana-Champaign for about 4.5 years. And I've been keeping track of the number of people in jail over part of that time. I'm not practicing medicine anymore. And it's been a while since I've done that. And what I have here, and I've handed it out to everybody, is information on the total number of people that are actually in the jail, as opposed to all the ones that are in jail plus on electronic home detention, and plus all those, I don't have any information on those who are out in the community on bail or on recognizance. But these are the numbers of people that are in the jail, and that has real importance for people on the county board, because you're the ones who make decisions about whether you're going to do renovations in the jail or add beds to the jail, whether you're going to be paying, how many staff you're going to be paying for correctional officers, how many of the sheriff's officers and others are able to be out in the community doing other things that hopefully will prevent crime and keep the community safe. And one of the reasons that I provide it is because it's not easily available to you other ways. And the Racial Justice Task Force members are going to talk a little bit about some of the ways that will make information like this more available so that you have it for decision making. Information is power, and it's important for you to have the power to be able to make good decisions. And at any rate, if you look at this side of the paper, it's on mine, I've got the same thing on both sides. But anyhow, it shows how the numbers of people in the jail, the average number in the jail, has decreased over the years from 2012 to the present. And I've also color-coded it in the chart up there to show with the lighter colors as it goes from purple to pink to dark yellow to light yellow when it's getting into lower ranges. And so we've had a significant improvement in it. If you look down at the bar graph on the, at the line graph on the bottom, you can see the first 3 months in 2018 are significantly lower than previous years. And some of that may be related to the changes in the bail law that Julia Reitz presented, a state's attorney presented to you at the beginning of this year, or other changes in attitudes towards setting bail, or changes in the weather, or changes that come about because in the jail they are doing more to screen people for mental health problems and refer them to treatment and help them to stay out of jail. So there's a lot of things going on, and we don't really know exactly what's doing it. But having this kind of information is one of the ways that you can begin to look at what's happening, try to see which part of it might be making a difference, and continue and move forward with it. If you look on the back, you can see the easy version of it, which is just the number per year. And again, it's gone down from an average of almost 250 in 2012 to 193 in 2016 and 199 in 2017. We may well be on a course to much lower numbers this coming year. I hope so. And I hope that we can continue to make more improvements. As I was mentioning to Jack Anderson before we started, we were talking about the fact of people who forget their appointments for the court. Katie Blakeman, as circuit court clerk, is in the process of setting up a system so that there will be reminders to people who have court dates so that they don't accidentally miss them. And as Jack said, a lot of people just aren't that responsible about remembering every little date, everything that's coming up. And and I say, well, I get 4 reminders for a dentist appointment. It'd be really nice to get reminders if there are court dates. And they're working on an automated system. A person who can call and remind people will probably work better for a lot of people, but at least this is a start for it. So I just want to let you know that some things are definitely getting better, but just because your kid went up from a C to a B in school doesn't mean you don't want them to get an A. And I think there's still room for improvement. And I'd be happy to answer questions afterwards. I did put on the backside a little note, the numbers of people in jail that come out on the sheriff's website each day, that's at a particular moment in time. The ones that are on this paper are based on numbers that the sheriff sends to the Illinois Department of Corrections and seems to be the total number that are in or out of the jail during the day, and it's always about 15 higher. But the numbers for 2028 on the sheriff's website, the average for January was about 151. For February, it was 136. And for March so far, it was 141. So this is kind of less, not much more than half of what it was about 6 years ago. So, and I also put my email on the bottom of this in case you have any questions for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dottie. Is there any other public participation? See none, we'll close that. Go on to communications from board members. Are there any communications? There are none. Okay. Let's go on to Justice and Social Services. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today we have a presentation from Dr. Carolyn Randolph and Mr. Ryan Hughes. They're going to present on the database and recommendations of the Community Engagement Subcommittee of the Racial Justice Task Force. And I believe the section that they're discussing is listed in pages 9 through 14 of your packets, fellow board members. So without further ado, I'll turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Robert King, for extending an invitation to us and to the board for creating an opportunity to further discuss the recommendations put forth by the Community Engagement Subcommittee and the RJTF as a whole. We are focusing on Community Engagement Subcommittee recommendations 3 and 4. Overwhelmingly, the residents want to see the county board take bold action to eliminate racial disparities in the criminal justice system. And so one of the things that we did was that we worked in collaboration with Dr. Beverly Wilson at the University of Illinois and 2 graduate-level student groups to collect, analyze, interpret, and visualize data collected from the county's police departments, jail, and court. Overall, we processed more than 1 million data sets from the dates ranging January 2010 to November 2016. And so I'll let Ryan address some of the findings that we were able to pull out from this research.
So the students in that fall of 2016 urban planning class began this data collection effort. and were able to create a database that was then hosted online. And then the two other student groups that Carolyn mentioned took that database a little bit further and did some statistical analysis on the data that was included. They looked at data from 5 of the local law enforcement agencies, including the Sheriff's Department. They also had some data from the county jail, and then they had about a year of data from the circuit clerk's office. We found significant, or I should say that the two student groups, when they did their report, which is, the report is hosted online on the county board's website, they found significant racial disparities within different components of the criminal justice system. I'm going to highlight one from the law enforcement side of the criminal justice system. So in looking at the 5 years of data from 2010 to 2015, the students found that there was a statistically significant predictor of whether or not a person was placed in jail was race. This was found even when controlling for age, sex, or crime of the offender. Holding these variables constant, a black person was 4 times more likely to be put into jail than a white person in those 5 years. Again, a black person was 4 times more likely to be placed in jail than a white person in 2010 to 2015 across 5 law enforcement agencies in Champaign County, even when controlling for age, sex, and crime across 35 different crime codes. This is really important, and this piece of data, or this conclusion, I should say, from the data, is an example of what can be found if we use data in the right way. And we think that the database that the students created is an example of the power of data that the county board could leverage in the future, and which we're calling on the county board to leverage. In this process, we and the students, the different student groups who looked at this, found that the current data systems across the different agencies within the county's criminal justice system are currently insufficient in their ability to collect and interpret, and most importantly, disseminate both the data and analyses of the data. So we're here tonight to ask the county board to adopt the 4 community engagement recommendations from the Racial Justice Task Force report. But importantly, what we're asking for are 4 different things related to data. So first, we need to improve access to data within the local criminal justice system. An example of this is found on the sheriff's website. The sheriff does have a fair amount of data on their website, but when the students were setting up this database, they wanted it to be dynamic so that it was continually grabbing new data as it was presented. But there's a page on the sheriff's website that has a CAPTCHA, which you may have run into in your daily lives, requiring the user to input text that they see in an image. This prevented the students from being able to automatically pull the data down. So that's an example of an access barrier. Second is format of data. So we want the county board to be able to work with the different agencies and organizations within the criminal justice system to improve the format or almost streamline format of data sets across the agencies so that they can better speak with each other or better be combined. An example of this is the number of PDF data sets that the students were working with and trying to use software to convert into data that could be used. Thirdly, and kind of tied with that second one, is cross-agency integration so that the data can speak to each other across the different agencies. We'd really like to see some sort of identifier, not to invade on anyone's privacy, but maybe a randomly generated identifier so that we could track a person's, their outcomes throughout the criminal justice system, perhaps from arrest or interaction with a law enforcement agency all the way through being released from the system at the end. If we can do this, which the students weren't able to do as the data systems are set up now, we could really begin to hone in on where racial disparities are being introduced in the system. That's simply something that we weren't able to do systematically. And then lastly, the county board really needs to lead the effort to establish a system of really strong analysis of the data throughout the criminal justice system. And that has to involve and invite in diverse communities from within the county. Other organizations, volunteers, you know, the Racial Justice Task Force is a great example of the diversity of people who can come together and with no budget or significant resources, collaborate with people outside of the county board to create something that is substantial, the database, for example. We worked with a number of different organizations and groups to do that. We really think that our database is an example, a somewhat insufficient example, but a beginning foundation of what the county board could really lead the effort to create within our county, so that we can begin to really, again, as I said, identify those locations where these racial disparities are coming up. I think it's important to note that we've identified that there are racial disparities within our county. We know that they're probably at different points within the criminal justice system, but it's going to take a lot more work to get further to identify where they're coming up, why they're coming up, and then to also track the progress of efforts to reduce those racial disparities.
So again, we're calling on the county board to continue the efforts that we started as the Community Engagement Subcommittee by adopting and approving all 4 recommendations submitted in our report. The county board commissioned the Racial Justice Task Force to identify the prevalence and impact of racial disparities in the county's criminal justice system. Without a budget and without institutional support, we used that time to develop a database that pinpointed areas of racial disparity and their impact on the larger county. We found substantial information that coincides with existing national trends, despite facing numerous challenges to accessing our data. We also found that current attempts to track criminal justice data across legal agencies, again, are insufficient and do not answer nor provide solutions for the questions regarding racial disparities put forth by the county board. So we're calling on the county board to do 2 things. 1, to approve and adopt the recommendations put forth by the Community Engagement Subcommittee. And 2, to establish a working group to further develop the database. This includes a commitment of 2 or more board members to participate in the group, and we're asking for that kind of participation because I think that goes a long way in ensuring that we have some kind of clarity and transparency about the process of tracking data and how to use that data in a way that's going to be beneficial to the board as well as to our community. We're asking for the support of the board to help eliminate barriers to accessing data. For example, helping with FOIA requests and getting that raw information. And this working group can be placed under the Community Engagement Oversight Committee, or there are other ways to think about how to retool it. But again, those are the 2 things that we're asking for: the adoption and approval of our recommendations and the establishment of a working group to further develop the database. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Randolph. And Mr. Hughes, any questions from the rest of the board? Patsy, please.
Well, thank you very much for the work. It's terrific. When Bev and his students were working on developing the database and I'm assuming a model, were they looking at other communities as a way to begin this process for themselves, or were they working just on their own cognizance and what suggestions were coming out of your task force? If it's I would be very interested, and you can send it to me via email or something like that, what communities that they looked at as model sources. I'm not implying that they took it directly from them, but was that a starting point for them? And if it is a starting point for them, then did they find out from those, looking at those communities, exactly how the results of setting up some form of data analysis help those communities address the issues that you're bringing forward in your report and to us tonight?
So the short answer is that we don't know, but it would be a question for Dr. Wilson. His class is in urban planning, and so it may have seemed odd to some of you to think of urban planning students doing data, but the idea was to see the power of data across, of course not for Mrs. Petrie, but the idea is for them to understand the power of data in changing communities and improving communities. So I imagine that in the introduction to this project, they did explore some other communities and their efforts, but they didn't include that in the report that or the presentations that they gave to us. Yeah, I'll put a note in to have them follow up with that.
But this is also based on a lot of research that's being done across the United States that's looking at data and beginning to ask those questions. So I come from a critical race theory and from the U of I as well. That was my doctorate, was with dealing with race in digital media. So one of the ways that we go through and think about research design by asking those questions of racial disparities did inform the project as well. So it's not that they're just looking, not just including what Bev, but for us, when we came up with the research design, it allowed us to ask and answer those questions.
I don't want you to think I know that and I understand that. I just wondered if Bev had some more information that would help us as a county board think through your two requests to the board and how things could be built along the way. That was the purpose.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I think that is very important to understand this situation across the board with what happens with any criminal or, anything that we have to deal with in these situations. I had a few questions. One is, you mentioned about 5 different groups, the cities in the county and the sheriff's office, and many of these are autonomous groups. Have you discussed any of these issues with them to see where they would play in this organization if they want to be involved in this organization? And have you discussed it with the coalition, the community coalition, to see if some of those responsibilities actually belong there? You got quite a list of different responsibilities here, including positions, and including a director of research and data development, and then many other positions below those. Obviously, those positions are going to cost quite a bit of money. I'm not sure if you're aware, but we don't have any money. When we talked a lot in reentry and crisis planning about data, and you discussed a lot about all these organizations should kind of have the same footprint or should work together. We had a major problem with trying to get these organizations to even discuss those things. There's a lot of HIPAA violation issues, which is a state mandate that there's only certain medical people can be involved in doing those things, and you just can't do that. I mean, we've got millions of dollars worth of computer upgrades that we have to do just for the county, let alone create even the questions that can be asked. So every one of those agencies that you're talking about have different questions, different responsibilities, and we can't ask them to change what they want to do just for us to say, this is what we're looking for. It was very difficult even just to get an ID for this from the state IDOC, so people could have an ID when they come out of the prisons. So I'm not sure that some of these things we're capable of even having any influence on or discussion with those things. So I was just wondering how you expect us to deal with them. So I think I just start with those questions.
So we're beginning to kind of break down our report and take it to different groups. We've already been to the Urbana School District, for example, to speak on schools and the criminal justice system. I think the important thing to note here is that we're calling on the county board to lead this effort and to step up because of its importance to the county board and the county board's governance and oversight of the entire county. But what we ran into is what you're talking about, the difficulty in having different agencies having their data work together. But we were just a volunteer-led task force of the county board, and so that was a difficult process. We feel that with the leadership of the county board itself, working with these agencies, that's where change will have to start and begin. Otherwise, we won't have a coalesced effort to do this, and piecemeal efforts will continue to fail. But that may be a slightly insufficient answer, but we're really calling on the county board to take up this leadership.
Ms. Stephanie?
Thank you for this. I think this is really exciting, and I actually think that we should recognize the fact that that part of our county is the University of Illinois. And so, we've had these researchers doing this, but I actually think that there is a lot of potential to continue to work with the University of Illinois. And to Jim's point, he's correct, if we are cash strapped, to leverage additional money. So, we're sitting next to a university that has the Institute for Computing in the across, I don't know exactly, the humanities and social sciences, right, which is an entity which exists to put supercomputing power into answering these kind of questions. How do you aggregate data across platforms? I mean, that's what that whole center does. And they have a really well-established track record of getting funding. And I think what's important is funding in places that we're probably not right now looking at. So we're not talking about DOJ funding. This is, unless the federal government, follows through on their promise and defunds all of these things, this is National Science Foundation funding. This is NEH funding, right? And it's a research university that has this incredible track record in getting those kind of funds to address national issues, right? And I think that this, as you said, this is an issue that's being addressed across the nation. And this is a chance, not just for this county board, but I think for the University of Illinois to become a national leader on this. And then when you add in the specific and important scholarship that's being done across the humanities and social sciences, and groups like the Education Justice Project, which just received a big NEH grant, which has put the university at the forefront of criminal justice. I actually think that there's huge potential for this partnership to actually leverage funding that would not otherwise be available, right, to the county board, and that we're fortunate that we are a county that has the university. So I think that this is really important, and that this can then help drive some of the other recommendations in the Racial Justice Task Force. So that was just the one thing. I know that you're all aware of that, but I do think that there's ways that we as a county board could take even more advantage of the university being in our backyard.
Absolutely, and there are a number of grants that are available to community groups and community organizations. As you mentioned, NEH has a digital humanities grant that they actually offer to communities that are developing digital portals and digital databases that can be used for public good. So there are these other ways in which we can bring together a group like this and find funding that will put us on the map as Champaign-Urbana. And in talking to university professors and faculty at the U of I, and even visiting scholars, when they learned about what we were doing with this database, they were thoroughly impressed, because something like this caliber work typically happens in a Chicago or New York or somewhere that's seen as a big kind of tech hub, Silicon Valley, wherever. It's seen as a big city thing, but not necessarily a town like this. So I think Urbana-Champaign should applaud itself, and the county board should applaud itself for producing the Racial Justice Task Force, and now put those efforts to continue on with the database.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Mr. Tenza?
Thank you for everything you're doing. It's greatly appreciated. Moving forward, I would like to move that we accept the 4 recommendations starting on page 12 and ending on page 14.
Have a motion, a second by Mr. Patterson.
Is this an action item?
There's no action item on the agenda, so I think it's something we could work for and we can't have any action right now anyway, certainly.
So this is something that we could propose a motion for future?
For the future might be a good idea. If I may speak, there's a number of issues here, like some of them, like item 1A, we've talked about moving county board meetings, but there are issues with open meeting acts. There's problems with recording it, things like that. It's difficult to find other places where you have the same facilities we have here, so there are definitely problems with that. Certainly B is a good idea, but I mean, that's something that we should do on our own. We can accept that recommendation. It's symbolic. Item 2, with mixed media is a double-edged sword. We can put this all on Facebook and get comments, but are the comments all for, we say you want our constituents. Who's our constituent? Who's not? Who's from Douglas County? I mean, how many times are they going to post? So on and so forth. It's, there are lots of trolls out there. How do you deal with that? I mean, that's a serious problem. You know, many organizations hire people to have social media specialties as employee. We can do that too. Of course, that costs money. So I mean, there are lots of difficult things there. Like creating close relationships with editors of local media. We'd love the News Gazette to be friendly to us all the time. Tom does a good job, but he's only one person. And we can't control what the other people do. So there are lots of things that are really sort of vague in those areas. And I think we need to go back, take a look at, pull out what we can actually do and, what things that we don't have much effect on. Certainly number 3, I think we could work on that one. That'd be the next place to start out.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, is this something that we could take up in either a study session or a separate meeting to
Something
decide
like that,
upon?
or if you want to maybe put together a committee sometime, work on, decide what is really doable here that we have, that is more than symbolic, and that, is worthwhile.
Okay. So how will we move forward? Essentially, is it just, at this point, we're in information mode?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Dr. Randolph and Mr. Hughes, if there are no further questions, thank you all for presenting. And we will get back to you as we work through dividing and seeing what we could do to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving forward, the next thing we have under Justice and Social Services is we have the Community Reentry Quarterly Report for December 2017 through February 2018. And this is listed on page 15 through 16. I don't think anyone's here for that group. So I would say the only thing that I noted to make sure is that in March, there is a presentation that they're supposed to come to the board to discuss continued funding. So that will be discussed, I'm sorry, going forward in our next meeting, I guess, is when it's supposed to happen. So thank you. Next, we have a couple of monthly reports on file: the Animal Control January 2018 report, the Emergency Management Agency February 2018 report, Head Start February 2018 report, Probation and Court Services January 2018, Public Defender 2018 January, and the Veterans Assistance Commission January 2018 report. And so those reports are on file on the county board site there. And then the next piece of other business, I have the semi-annual review of closed session minutes. And I'd love a motion to keep those minutes closed.
I move to keep them closed.
Okay, thank you. That's first. And a second by Mr. Rosales. And all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. So of that. And then in regards to the chair's report, just that there isn't anything specific to report at this time. And I think for the next month of April, we'll look to try to pull, won't discuss the Racial Justice Task Force at that time, because I'll try to spend some time doing a little bit more research to prepare us for a May discussion around some of the issues that have been discussed with some of the local criminal justice agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. Next up is Policy Personnel and Appointments, Mr. Rosales.
Item A in Section 8, County Clerk's report on page 19. If there's any questions, the county clerk is here. He could entertain any questions you may have regarding licenses, civil unions, marriage licenses, state reimbursements, so on and so forth. Seeing none, I ask to place this on file. It's also on the county clerk's website. So we don't need a motion for that, do we? Great. Section B, or item B, is the state's attorney's request for additional assistant state's attorney for 1 year. This was distributed at your desk, so I'll give you a few minutes to look over it. And I believe our illustrious state attorney is also here. If you have any questions regarding some of the responsibilities of that state's attorney, assistant state's attorney, you could ask Julia. She's here. Give you a few more minutes.
Can I make the motion to approve?
Sure, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Okay, a motion moved by Keene, Tinsley, seconded. All those in favor? Any discussion? Okay, let's open it up for discussion. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and
Jack.
start. In the bottom paragraph on the page, midway, it talks about the request that the board approve an additional temporary assistant state's attorney position. And I guess my question is, how long is temporary? And is that just till this is settled, this matter with the hospital tax?
I certainly would be more than happy if you approved an additional permanent position. My people are very overworked, and there's lots of things we could be doing that we're not able to do. But with regards to this specific request, the hospital property tax exemption litigation is significant. And we are taking that on internally. We're not seeking to hire outside counsel at a significant expense to the county, which I believe many other counties probably would have done, frankly. And so I've had to devote substantial resources within my office to this one piece of litigation without additional resources being brought in. So what that means essentially is that I've taken one attorney who started out this litigation when he was in the civil division, and then when the case kind of was in the appellate court process and there wasn't much going on, I moved him to this criminal division, and I had some personnel changes, and so I have 3 people in the civil division. And then the case came back and is ramping up, and ASA Fletcher is uniquely qualified to be able to handle this litigation, so I moved him back. So now essentially I have 4 people in the civil division who are also handling many of the other complex matters that are brought on behalf of the county and that we're dealing with, particularly with regards to the nursing home, again, without additional resources to my office. So I'm essentially one person short on the criminal side, and everyone else is having to cover for that. My plan at this point is, first of all, the board has to set the number of assistant state's attorneys within the office. That's by statute. And so my plan at this point is to, if you approve the request, to advertise a position and see if I can get somebody who's willing to come on a not permanent basis, with the idea that there's always turnover in the office, and maybe that would become a permanent position. You're asking how long? I don't know. I mean, because I don't know how long the Carl litigation is going to take.
I guess my question comes from, I come from a county environment where all positions had control numbers. And some of them were temporary positions that were allowed to remain on the books when they were needed. Sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So that position may always exist, but it might exist on the books as a number with a T behind it, unfunded. And then whenever those positions are needed to be activated, then the board's approach for funding for those for that particular task, and that would be the case here. So
Right.
when I read temporary, I'm not familiar with the county practice here. If you can hire another person, what position number are you using? And how does that not, and I'm not accusing you of this, it was something that came out of my old organization where people would just kind of forget they were temporary. And then 15 years later, 50 positions that were temporary over the last 15 years are now permanent. And the board never caught it because there wasn't proper position control audits, if you will. So how do you do this? I'm supportive of you having the position under the circumstances. I think it's a good idea. But how do we undo it? How do we know it's not a permanent addition to your department? Thank you.
I'm looking at Mrs. Busey.
I can tell you that we will be watching it, and we will report to you. And in the staffing budget, it will be listed as an additional temporarily approved assistant state's attorney position. So we're not going to lump it in with the other total. We're going to list it with the state's attorney staffing budget, but it would be listed subject to whatever date you put on it. And initially, you may want to put this fiscal year on it, and then we would review it during the budget process, and you would determine at that time, the state's attorney would present you information of the continuing need, either for 6 months into the next fiscal year or 12 months, and we would do it through the budget and through the documents that you approve in the budget process.
Yeah,
And certainly the goal is.
I've seen it go south. I know we actually, just in my own agency department, I had a position control specialist to track all the positions in my own department. Now, I know, but things do fall through the cracks, and then over the years, it becomes, trust me, I've seen it, where it's just, yeah, you know what, there is a turnover in all government agencies. The knowledge leaves. People don't remember why that position's there, and suddenly we've got positions that were only temporary that continue to be filled year after year.
Well, certainly my goal is that the property tax exemption litigation is going to end at some point. I mean, if it's going to be ongoing, and at some point I need to come back and say, we need to hire outside counsel, then we can have that discussion. But at this point, it is taking up resources in my office that have not been compensated in any way.
Thank you. I guess my question was more on the administrative side on how we manage the position control number. Thank you.
Ms. Furtado?
So I understand that at this time you're not asking for a budget amendment, but I think I'd be a lot more comfortable with this if there was at least some sort of projection. I mean, we know what, the salary range is, and my understanding is that your budget is tight, so the assumption would be that whatever that salary range is what the budget amendment would be. So I think I'd be a lot more comfortable if there was some sort of budgetary analysis or something attached to this. I don't think I'm particularly comfortable with, I'm not asking for one now, but I'm probably going to in the future without any sort of understanding of what that is.
Well, so I have excess personnel budget available because of staffing changes that have already occurred this year. And so that's why I'm not asking for it immediately. I also want to, frankly, advertise the position and see if I can find somebody who's willing to take it under these circumstances. You know what my salary range is, so, an assistant state's attorney starts at $49,000 a year. My average salary is probably high 50s. So, and that's the salary, essentially. And again, I'm going to just keep going back to the fact that if I were to hire outside counsel for the Carl litigation, we would not be talking about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. We'd be talking about a whole lot more than that.
Mr. Mitchell?
Why don't we do a sunset and make it job specific?
That's fine.
And so that way, if it carries over a different budget year, that would be fine. You don't have to worry about it. But if it sunsets into the future, then we know that position would end.
King?
Is that actionable? Can I motion or second? So amend the motion to include what Mr. Mitchell said about the sunset?
To be able, will somehow be able to carry over to a different budget in case it's carried over.
I think it's,
I think the dates, that's why, I think you sunset it based upon the termination of litigation.
no, no.
Well,
I think your fiscal year, end of the fiscal year would be appropriate.
end of fiscal
So
year. So there's a motion on the floor, and there's an amended motion
Yeah.
to,
I would recommend the end of the fiscal year because the state's attorney can certainly present to you during the 2019 budget presentation the continuing need for this additional position, and you can then approve it with her 2019 budget. If needed. And with regard to Ms. Furtado, we could have some financial on the current fiscal year budget analysis for you at the board meeting when you take the final vote on this, if that's helpful.
That would be, thank you.
McGuire?
Sorry. No, I don't have anything discussing the amendment or the,
Is there? Okay, there's a second to the amendment? Okay, so you want to vote on that amendment? Discussion, McGuire?
I don't want to discuss, I want to recuse myself because of the discussions about the Carl, and my spouse has significant business with Carl.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Are there any further discussion? Esri?
Thank you. So is the amendment with the sunset at the end of the fiscal year? I'm just making sure that, I guess that we all know, and I'm clear in my mind, okay. Just, so, December 31st, 2018, it ends, and if need be, we'll look at it in a future budget. Thanks.
I will also need to recuse myself as my wife is an employee of Carl.
Okay, thank you. Patsy?
I don't think you need to, but. We're not suing them.
Patsy?
We're the defendants, actually.
Okay, can you tell us approximately how much you have in your budget due to your, the changes within your personnel?
I think they're about 30,000 at this point.
So in theory, based on the range that you work with, that could cover, well, probably won't
But
quite cover.
I'm going to add, right, but I'm going to add that, as I think I've discussed previously, that we lost a contract with the Department of Children and Family Services that we've had for many years, and we also did not receive grant funding for a victim advocate's position that we have had for many, many years. So that's part of my, attempt
Tight
to
spot.
balance my budget as well.
Right, the
so.
purpose of my inquiry, though, mostly has to do with figuring out that you may have to come back
Yes.
to us to make up any differential that after you negotiate with a person and what you have in your budget. That's
Right.
the purpose of my inquiry.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Storr and then Mrs. Furtado?
Thank you. Could I have a clarification? Are we, if our spouse works for Carl, we have a perceived conflict, and
I don't believe you do.
I didn't think so either. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Furtado?
does your spouse work for Carl? I think that,
Oh, yes, she does, or she did today.
Just as one last point of clarification, this is a temporary person, but you're anticipating that they'd be a full-time person, so there would be benefits attached to this as well as salary?
Yes.
Is that correct?
It will depend on when this individual is hired. But when this individual hits 1,000 hours, we have to move that individual to regular.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, let's vote on the amendment first. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, that motion passes. The amended? Oh, the amendment passed. The main motion, all those in favor? As amended? Aye. All those opposed? Nay. One nay. Motion passes. Okay. Any other further questions you might have for the state's attorney? Great. This will be on our, thank you. County Administrator, monthly Administrative Services Monthly Report, 2018 for February. I'd like a motion to place this on file. This should be on our website. Okay, moved by Pius, second by Furtado. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Other business, semi-annual annual review of closed minutes, sessions minutes. I believe those remain closed, no?
I move they remain closed.
Okay, moved by Pius. Could I get a second? Second by Summers. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Chair's report, the only thing that I have is county board appointments expiring April 30th, 2018, for information only. Various fire protection districts, term 5/1/2018 through April 30th, 2021. Okay, designated items to be placed on the agenda, I believe is, no? No? Okay. Okay, seeing none, I'll give it to finance. Stephanie?
Ms. Furtado, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Rosales.
All right. So we're going to start with budget amendments and transfers. The first one is budget transfer 18-0002, Fund 080, General Corporate Departments 075, General County and 140 Correctional Center, total $180,846. Reason to fund corrections and court security increases for fiscal year 2018 for labor contracts settled in November 2017 and 2018. Do I have a motion? Motion, Mr. Anderson, seconded by Mr. Rosales. Discussion. My understanding is this closes out our CBA for last year. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Moving to the next item, Budget Amendment 18-0003, Fund 080, General Corporate 040, Sheriff, increased appropriations $15,220, increased revenue $15,220. Reasons to fund received for total squad car 9-3 of 2017 to be placed back into line item to allow for purchase or of replacement. Do I have a motion? I saw Mr. Goss first. I saw Mr. Ezrican second. Discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. 3, Budget Amendment 18-00004, Fund 080, General Corporate -072, ADA Compliance, an increased appropriations of $7,700, increased revenue, none. This is from the fund balance. And the reason is to re-encumber funds to complete the ADA parking lot improvements for the satellite jail. Do I have a motion? Mr. Anderson, and sorry, Lorraine, yeah, sorry, I was talking too fast there, is a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. All right, issue number 4, Budget Amendment 18-00005, Fund Capital Asset Replacement Department 05 None Facilities and Planning, increased appropriations $151,815, increased revenue, none from the fund balance. Reason to re-encumber funds for capital asset replacement fund projects not completed in fiscal year 2017. Do I have a motion? Mr. Rector, you got in. A second? Mr. Esri. all those, discussion?
Just a quick question.
Yes.
So is this just leftover funds from projects, or is this funds set aside for this, for current projects? Yeah.
This is funds that weren't spent last year that will need to be spent this year on projects.
Yeah, so.
For the same projects that they were, or,
I think substantially the same
Okay.
projects, yes.
Yeah, so encumbered. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Number 5, I now know how Alex Trebek feels. Budget Amendment 18-00006, Fund 075, Regional Planning Commission, Department 869, Weatherization, Ameren, Illinois. Increased appropriation of $202,000, increased revenue of $202,000. Reason, to accommodate a new contract with Ameren, Illinois that complements the existing ILHON Weatherization Assistance Program for Champaign County. This contract will allow enhanced weatherization services, including installation, air sealing, and health and safety measures for an additional 80 income-eligible households. Do I have a motion? Lorraine, a second. Chris, discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. And now number 6, Budget Amendment 18-00007, Fund 080, General Corporate Department 077, Zoning and Enforcement, increased appropriations of $890, increased revenue, none from the fund balance, and the reason for this is funds necessary for the nursing home subdivision application fee to the City of Urbana and required legal notice for zoning case. So Mr. Goss and Tinsley is the second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so now, follow along in your packets. You're going to a different blue packet, one of your multiple blue packets. We are now on Finance A, Budget 7, Budget Amendment 18-0009, Fund 093, Foreclosure Mediation Department 031, Circuit Court, increased appropriations of $16,156, increased revenue, none from fund balance. The reason is the grant funding for foreclosure mediation program expires in May 2018. Program fees collected to date to be used to fund temporary part-time program coordinator position to end of fiscal year 2018. And there is an explanation of this included in your packet. Do I have a motion? Mr. King, Mr. King, and then Mr. Rosales is the second. Any discussion or questions? We do have people here if you have questions. Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now, we are moving on to B, where we're going to hear from the treasurer, and you have information in your packet, but then you have additional information in your other blue packet. On pages 1 through 5. So you have some in your main packet and then some in your other blue packet.
Mums.
There we go. All right. So this is our general corporate fund cash flow projection. After speaking with Mrs. Busey, I'm going to alter my presentation to the board. I think you're all aware of what we're doing a little differently. So I'm only going to do general corporate fund tonight. Mrs. Busey is going to do the presentation, the cash flows and information on the nursing home, specifically on the nursing home fund. So we're just going to look at the general corporate fund here. So we look at the March numbers here. On March 1st, we showed that we had a cash balance of $1,290,772 in the general fund. And the very next day was actually a payroll day. It took us down $800 and some thousand. And so really I was impressed because last month's cash flow projection showed us at about $435,000. So it's been pretty dead on with our averages. As you see, I'm showing that we would have a negative balance of $195,000 in the general fund at the end of the month. And that is something that we've been anticipating. That's why we had you pass the authorization for a loan from the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund last month. And I anticipate that I will need to access those funds, as I mentioned in the memo, probably the last week of March. And so we will take care of that between my office and the auditor's office and get those funds moved over.
Is that about the time we've done that before, or is that a little early?
The last 2 years, they did not require a loan. And the year before that, it was in early April. So it's about within about a week. It all mostly depends on the timing of payrolls. Yep, payrolls are really what are the key to this. So, so that's on the without a loan. I'm going to pull up the other file that I attached for you. That's going to show you with the loan. And it shows you with the loan once we add in that $1 million. And I actually, on this particular slide, used the real numbers for payroll that we had already. So it's just slightly different than the other one, but $800,000 after that loan. We show a slight deficit there, $5,000 in April. If we have to access additional funds, we can do that during April, but being within $5,000, that's something that we can handle. Any questions on the general corporate fund cash flow? Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Could this be impacted if the nursing home needed some money when we're kind
Of course it would be. Yeah, so if we had an unexpected expenditure, we had to do a loan.
Because we've got 3 pay periods
Right.
in March, so let's just say they needed help.
Let's say they needed help. So, it would impact that ending cash balance number. And so in reality, what you're doing is you've borrowed money from Public Safety Sales Tax Fund, it goes into the general fund, and then we loan it out to the nursing home. Absolutely, it could happen that way. It's there. Real estate tax distributions won't start until late May. So this is what we have to deal with. This is what's available to us. Right now, just looking at the numbers and the numbers that I have access to, I would say if there is going to be a need for additional funds for the nursing home for payroll, it would be that last week of the month. Complicating the last payroll of the month is that it is a county holiday. So payroll actually will be a day earlier, which means funds have to be into the treasurer's office a day earlier as well. All right, otherwise, I just want to let you know that tax bills, it appears that they're going to be on time. We received our abstract. I know everybody's excited to hear that. Let me assure you, your taxing districts within the county are excited to hear that, especially the school districts. They're always worried about timeliness of receiving their distributions. So right now, things are looking on track, and I appreciate the work of the assessor's office in making sure that the abstract got done on time. And the county clerk's office is working diligently on getting those rates applied so we can get bills generated and have all that go smoothly. Thanks.
We also have a resolution under this section. I almost did
So,
as well.
Last month, you approved a list of depositories for county funds. We added 2 banks last month, and then in the meantime, a new bank has opened in Mahomet, the State Bank of Forest, and they asked to be a depository for real estate tax funds. And so I'd ask that you approve a new list that updates that, and I think we have, for today, all of the new banks, but it seems like a new bank likes to open up about every other week in this community.
Mr. Esri, Mr. Summers as a second. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Just one point of, Mr. Chair, one point of order. Do I have to move to put his report on file or anything like that? I don't have to do that. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, next up, we are going to hear from the auditor, who has a nifty new report on the nursing home cash flows from operating activities. And if you're trying to find that one, it is the fold-out white piece of paper. And I, before you start, I want to commend, this I think is very helpful, so thank you very much for that.
Well, I actually owe Mr. Weibel a little credit for asking for something like this, and it gave me a little more information to dig into some of our historical data. If I can first go ahead and put my monthly report on file, if you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, yes.
Go ahead and put my monthly report on file. It is on the regular website, and then we'll jump right into the cash flow. You have a spreadsheet in front of you that comes from our CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report that we must do every year after we're audited. I really need to thank several people in our office for helping put that together, and I'll give you some of our awards that we just received at the end for the good news. On the top, receipts from customers, and you can see this goes from 2005 all the way to 2016, which was our last audit. There are averages there. This strictly deals with mostly cash payments to the employees, of course, as you can see that. What we have paid our vendors, what our net is after that. Also, we have reported our outstanding accounts payable. At the bottom of that is our average daily census. So you can tell based on the census how our fees and income relate to that. There are also the general notes that you have been receiving in your monthly report about the loans and other items. Those are all pretty standard. We've just kind of put them on the bottom here as little reminders. If anybody has any questions about this, I'm happy to take them now, or you are more than welcome to come to my office. The door is open, and we actually have these reports right there in my office, and we can go and look at a multitude of items because the nursing home is broken out as Schedule F within this CAFR report. Okay. Yes, Ms.
No, you go for it.
Sorry, old habits die.
I'll ask a question, then I'll come and see you, because you probably don't have this right off the top of your head. But if I try to make a relationship between the number of people in the home and the net cash, I can't do it directly. It doesn't work out that way, and then there'd be no causation. The argument always is if we have more people in that home, then we'd be better off, and we'd be better off, and be better off. Okay, so if you don't mind, going back and looking at 2009 and 2010, and then 2012, because those three have distinctively less negative. I mean, they still have negative, but it's much less than the others. Yet when I look at the average daily census, it's up there, but it isn't the highest, because if I roll over to 2014, when the highest is 2003, that net negative is considerable. So what I'm trying to sort out is, are there any cause and effects here that maybe we could learn from, is my point.
There are some instances, and I'll just kind of quickly give you my interpretation at this point from the hip, if you don't mind. Looking at 2009, we actually have more income, which helped that out a little bit. 10, as you see, our payables went up by 700,000, so that would have made a difference. And 11, you can see that the outstanding payables went up considerably, so there would be a little difference of the net cash. Don't forget, everybody, 2014 was a 13-month year, so it kind of skews these numbers a little bit. So that's something that we all need to keep in mind, is that that number may look a little different because of that. And I'll be happy to see you at any time. Anybody else? Okay, can I give my great?
I'm sorry, Mr. Patterson's hand.
Did you say 13-month year?
Yes, remember we went from a fiscal to a calendar year in 2014. That was just right before you were here, sir. Yeah, it's a little odd, but we were only 1 month away, and it really made it a lot easier for everything else in the long run for us to go to a calendar year. Great news, I have 2 little awards that our department received. One is the award for outstanding achievement in a popular annual financial reporting, which is called the PAFR. And then the second one, which is the big guy here, is the achievement of excellence in financial reporting for comprehensive annual financial report. And this is based on our 2016 audit, which quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, we were very late with. So I am very thrilled that we received this as quickly as we did. It tells you that our staff did an excellent job in getting everything together and getting it reported as quick as possible. I've got to thank Barbara Ramsey. She heads up all of this, and she's the lady that actually puts these numbers together, does an excellent job. Carol Roberson, Jing Lin, and Stacy Norton. And these ladies work very hard to make sure that everything is put together, and we keep receiving these awards year after year after year. So I thank those ladies with all my heart.
Congratulations.
Thank you, ma'am.
Next, we are going to move to the nursing home and in county administration. And again, the nursing home cash flow report is in your other blue packet. So with that, yes.
If you look in the packet of attachments for the nursing home cash flow report for February 2018, this is a new format. It has been compiled primarily with information provided by Flora Resnick from SAK, who is here this evening if you have questions about that. And in a format that we are hoping you find to be more useful. So if you have any suggestions or if you don't find this more useful, then please let me know. But this starts out with the current month for both revenue and expenditure. For revenue, showing the current month receipts as of February 28th in that first column. The next column is what we expected to receive in February. And the third column then shows the balance between what we expected and what we actually received. The next column is aging receipts as of February 28th, 2018, what we received that would have been credited for receipts from months prior to February 2018. The outstanding aging accounts receivable that we expected at the beginning of February, and then what is the aging balance after we subtract what we received on February 28th. And the total revenue received for the month, and then the total revenue outstanding. So the total revenue received for the month was $774,997 and change, and the total outstanding is $4,925,962 and change. Then on the expenditure side, we're looking at payroll, payroll taxes and benefits, and all other AP. All other AP is documented on the next page of this report, but just for going through this. So again, the same format, current month, what did we actually pay, what was due, and what's the difference. So you can see we paid $345,000 less than what was due for the month of November in terms of expenditures. And then the aging AP that we paid $238,180 there. Aging AP that was due was $3.6 million. So the current month balance on the aging is 3.4. Total expenditure for the month, $706,155 basically, and total outstanding AP is $3,758,691 and change.
Yes, thank you. I guess looking at the total, the last column up under the revenue, the total revenue outstanding at 4.9 million. Are we still going to write any of that off?
We are actually working on that.
Okay.
The auditor's office is working on it with the outside auditors as we speak. We have a meeting about it tomorrow
Okay.
morning, so I think you will see those numbers changing
So
soon.
that'll go down. And then just kind of related to that, maybe not directly related to the report, or any idea if we've been successful, the outside firm, to get any of those back payments received? I mean,
Does SAK have any information on that question? Yes, they do. If you would come to the mic, please.
As of yesterday, as of Monday, they went through probably 2/3 of the balance that was originally given to them. They were successful in rebilling about $149,000 between January and last week. They expect to follow up on managed care claims towards the end of this month. They're waiting about 45 to 60 days to follow up on with insurances typically. As far as the cash receipts, the actual cash that came in is less than $10,000 as of now, but it takes time. They start very late December, so 90 days is usually a good benchmark. From the time they get assessed, get access, bill, and see results coming in, they were able to go through a lot of AR. They identified over 300,000 of the accounts that they don't feel that they will be able to collect anything. They identified about 600,000 of the accounts where they are missing information that prevents them to follow up on collections, that they will work with the nursing home staff to see if they can get admission agreements or face sheets, whatever they need to still attempt to follow up. But it's still in works. And they have about 600,000 of accounts that they didn't have a chance to get to because the direction that was given to them by us is to work on the accounts that have highest probability of getting paid.
You told us once before, but I need to be reminded, anything they collect, what is the percentage that they take out of the collection?
I think 18%. I think 18% of collected, not billed or worked in with no collection. 18% of whatever they collect, 18%, and they will invoice the facility after the collection, and they will provide proof of collection to the account first before they're gonna charge you a penny.
Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Ms. Furtado. So we have private pay and we have private insurance. I was kind of surprised in this format to see that they were so high and so far behind. How much is really the same between the two? I mean, they're both separate lines, obviously. Why is it difficult to get paid from a private insurance company or the individual? Is the write-off going to be out of these lines, and where the expectation is we're going to get what's left?
I can tell you that the oldest balances are in private and private insurance. Private line item includes Medicaid pending, and that's where probably 90%, well, 90 is probably too aggressive, but I would say 65 to 70% of the balance outstanding is listed as private. That's where Medicaid pending counts fall into. Private insurance is all your traditional insurance contracts, and most of that is what they're trying to rebill. Because current, we bill and we follow up, and we attempt to collect. The old is what they're working on. I don't think you'll have high chances to see the entire balance. This report doesn't have the aged format, but that's where We're talking about accounts that are probably 15 months and older there, for most part.
Yeah, I'm just trying to tie, and maybe this is too early, but I'm trying to tie this $3.76 million to the 2 pages later when it's 3.9, what is that, 3.99, or almost 4 million? I'm referencing the 3.758 on page 6. And the 3.99 is at the very bottom right-hand corner of 9.
The 3.99 does not have the February expenditures or expenditures subtracted out of it. This report, this AP summary was as of the 1st of February.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. So I don't see any other questions. Is that accurate?
Do you want to go through the other pages of it?
The other pages?
The next page is just what we paid this month, and it just shows you the vendors who were paid, and whether it was a payment for a current month expense, an aging expense, or if it's a payment that's mandated by an agreement that we've entered into, which requires that payments be made.
Deb, would you clarify what current and aging are? Just current that month, or is that just means
Current
with?
was, from the page before, would have been February.
Okay,
What should have been paid in February. Aging is anything that should have been paid in January or before.
so basically 30 days rough, sort of.
Yeah, the current is
Yep.
just this month, yeah. And then the last 2 pages is the nursing home AP summary, which shows all the vendors and where they fall with payments, whether older than November 2017, December, January, and February. And in the report section at the end, which includes Champaign County Treasurer, I will tell you that I added some numbers to what SAK had provided because they didn't have these numbers. We added the payroll benefits, so IMRF, Social Security, health insurance. We added those numbers to this report. We updated workers' compensation as well. We also added the general corporate loan of $726,802, which is outstanding and had not previously been included as part of what the Champaign County is owed from the nursing home, basically because it was a loan and it wasn't treated like an invoice, I think is how that occurred. I believe there is still more work to be done on this report to make sure of its total accuracy, but we're working together to try and get that. We wanted to get it to you tonight in the most complete information that we have at this point.
Any questions? I do want to, I know that this represents a lot of work, and I want to thank both the staff and SAK. These new reports are in direct response to a request from the board for specific kind of information. So I know that everybody wants this to be as useful as possible. So if you feel that that you still have questions that aren't being answered by these different reports that the auditor and that the staff help put together, please by all means let us know, because these reports are very much in response to past board questions. Going on then with the agenda, we are going back to the original packet, and we're on cash flow management recommendation. And this is on page 35 and 36. So if you turn with me to page 36, you will see the recommended action. And the Finance Committee recommends to the County Board approval of a resolution for loan from the general corporate fund to the nursing home fund based on the following requirements. If there are not adequate funds to cover payroll in a payroll week, the county treasurer is authorized to cover the shortfall with a loan from the general corporate fund to the nursing home fund. And two, when a loan has been made as indicated in number 1, the county treasurer is further instructed to repay the general corporate fund from the nursing home fund with the next revenues deposited into the nursing home fund until the general corporate fund is fully repaid. And Mr. Weigel.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Forgive me for not repeating it.
Okay, so we have a first, do we have a second? All right, Mr. King, discussion. I'm sorry, Mr. Tinsley, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I saw Mr. McGuire first. Okay.
Perhaps I'm missing a number in here,
There's
like
no-
250,000 or something
There
like
is
that?
no number. This is to avoid the need for an emergency county board meeting if there is not enough money to cover payroll on a Tuesday for that week's payroll. And because of the action that is also explained in this memo, where we are not processing AP in non-payroll weeks, the likelihood of the need for a loan is much less. What had been happening is we were paying AP in non-payroll weeks and paying down the nursing home's cash balance to maybe only $20,000 or $30,000, which was not enough to carry over to payroll week and also be able to cover payroll. So every payroll week, we will also do AP, but we will cover payroll first and then cover the AP that we can afford to cover with what is left for that 2-week period.
Okay. Traditionally, any loan from one fund to another requires 15 votes and should be limited in value so that the county board can sufficiently protect the funds of the taxpayers of the county. And I think we should continue to provide that response, protection to the county taxpayers, and any suggestion that we should do otherwise, I would not support.
If I could just have one point of clarification, I did verify with the state's attorney, a loan resolution only requires a majority vote. It's only when you're actually making an appropriation that it requires 15 votes. And a loan is not an appropriation because it is intended to be paid back. This concept was reviewed with the state's attorney's office, and Barb Mann did indicate that this was probably more in keeping with what a loan should be, where you identify immediately how that loan will be repaid. And it's done all in the same resolution.
Well, I guess I would question that because that's not been the practice, and would not want to repeat myself.
Mr. King, you had a question? I'm sorry. Mr. Goss.
Yeah, I guess I would, and I don't know if we need to amend this to say this, but I would like to have the board noticed when this is drawn upon and noticed when it's completely paid off. I don't know whether we need to add that as an amendment or whether that can just be a suggestion.
I think you can just direct the administrator to do that, be fine.
Okay, I'd like to make that direction.
Yes.
So I have spoken at great length with Ms. Busey about this, and I do believe that this is the right way to do this. I see the biggest risk to this being that if we got into a cycle where we had to only pay payroll, you are running the risk of putting off vendors for a long period of time until the county board can take other affirmative action to change the way we're doing this. That's the risk. I'm not worried about this getting out of control for the general fund not to be able to cover it, because those deposits are going to come in and we're going to pick them and start paying ourselves back each time. So if we're, let's say payroll is short $50,000, the next $50,000 that comes into the nursing home, it's going right to the general fund. If you're $200,000 short, the next $200,000, The nursing home brings in money every month. So the general fund's going to be made getting their money back. They might loan it out right away again. So you're running the risk of putting this on the backs of your vendors more. But this is, if you're going to need to do something so that you're not having to have emergency meetings, this, I believe, is an appropriate action.
Thank you.
This is something Deb and I first talked about back in January. Basically, it's a Band-Aid approach, but it does relieve the problem of trying to reach payroll. And there is, like you said, there is the issue, if we get stretched out too far, then you have a problem. But at least most of the time, we don't have to be sitting around here sweating whether or not we're gonna make payroll.
Ms. Petrie?
Thank you. I would like to reiterate what Mr. Goss suggested, and I trust our treasurer has listened to Mr. Goss, because
Absolutely.
even more importantly, this could build up such that we need to know if our vendors are really, we are really falling behind more and more with our vendors.
I will make sure that anytime I have to access that, the full county board will know the dollar amount that goes out, and then I will give you updates on money that comes back in. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Mr. McGuire?
So obviously, I would make the amendment that we change this to 250,000 and then have 15 votes. It sounds like we are wanting to put our responsibilities, county board members, and push them over into the treasurer's office rather than taking that responsibility, because we don't want to come in on a special meeting or provide our responsibility to control the taxpayers' dollars and make sure that the funds are moved appropriately between the general fund and the funds for the nursing home. That is our responsibility. It's not the treasurer's responsibility. So if we break this practice and it becomes a situation where it's insurance payment that needs to be paid so that the employees have insurance, and the administrator decides, okay, we have to get it done, so let's just move that money from the general fund. It's needed, we have to get it accomplished, so let's move it. A judge needs to be paid, okay, let's move it. So all of a sudden now, as county board members, the decisions are being made by the administrator, or it's being made by the treasurer, not by the county board members who have been elected by the county board districts and the voters, and which is our responsibility.
Ms. Busey?
I just want to clarify for the board's benefit that we are moving AP to the payroll weeks specifically to ensure that we make payroll first. And whatever is left over after payroll is what is made available for AP.
Sorry, I saw Ms. Petrie first, or I guess that was in response to you, so Mr. McGuire and then Ms. Petrie.
Well, thank you. I mean, making the loan for $250,000 to ensure that there's $250,000 available for payroll in the same way, and us voting for that, and having 15 votes is the same thing, and the money's available for the treasurer to use to make those things, payments is the same thing. So I don't.
Except we're not
But-
asking for $250,000 at this point. If payroll is short by $1,500, all we're going to do is move $1,500 from general corp to the nursing home payroll, and there won't be any other AP paid that week, because payroll is the first priority.
The difference is there's no limit, and the money has not been moved to the fund, out of the general fund. And there is no limit, and those dollars are available. And we aren't making this decision about how much is paid, and someone else is making the decision how far they can actually spend. It could be $500,000 eventually, because the nursing home has been sucking money out of the general fund for the last year, including $750,000, which seems to be the amount that we're going to have to borrow now to pay from that the treasurers just talked about, that we need to borrow from the tax.
It's Ms. Petrie, and then we'll go Mr. Patterson, Mr. Summer.
Thank you again. Just to remind folks, we were in a crunch because there wasn't enough money. When I was chair, and we sat over at the nursing home trying to figure out how we were going to make payroll. And it was Dan Welch who pulled it out of the hat and salvaged the situation so we could pay our employees. If we had had this kind of mechanism in place, we wouldn't have spent 2.5 hours over there. How many people were in the room, Deb? 4 or 5 of us in the room to solve the issue of how we were going to honor the fact that we should be paying our employees on time. And with the statement from our present treasurer, I feel comfortable that there will be respectably constant reports back and forth to us, so we might then have the opportunity of saying, as a board, we're getting uncomfortable because things are building up too much, or whatever happens, that will allow us a time to say we're uncomfortable about it. But that was a very unfortunate time that we had when we were trying to make payroll that way. And thanks to our previous treasurer and having a way of allocating some money without having to come to the board, because we didn't have the 48-hour window of time to notice, to do this. Otherwise, our employees would not have received their pay. So I am supportive of this, and it also gives us the opportunity, I am assuming, that if a comfort level is not there after several payments out and back and forth, the board has the opportunity to say, can we adjust this some way or another? Thank you.
Mr. Patterson.
Just want to clarify, this is exclusively for payroll?
Yes.
Okay. And how much is the average payroll?
225.
225. And just so I understand this clearly, as cash comes in dollar for dollar, it's paid back?
Right.
Automatically? Okay.
The treasurer has to do it, but your resolution instructs the treasurer to do that until it's paid back.
Okay.
Which would typically be within a week.
Okay. And if we decided at some point that we were uncomfortable with the setup, what would it take to change this?
You to provide direction.
Okay. Just want to clarify.
Mr. Summers, and then.
I'm trying to understand why it is on, I believe. Have I got it? I'm trying to understand why it would make sense to pay out $200,000 in AP and then the following week need to have an emergency meeting to make payroll. That, to me, makes absolutely no sense. Our first priority should be to pay our employees regardless. But this appears to me just to be a mechanism to smooth the process down and relieve the stress of extra meetings and wondering whether or not we're going to make payroll. I don't think there's going to be a significant change basically in what we're going to be putting out in AP. It's just a matter of how it's going to go out. So I'm confused with the $250,000, the worry about us abrogating our responsibility. I see nothing in this that presents any of those issues.
Mr. Esri.
Thank you. I can support this. I guess I would see it, the limit is a payroll, but it probably would never be a total payroll because I'd be saying that I guess if we got paid back, you'd have to start with one payroll that they didn't have any cash. So I can't imagine that they won't have some cash to be less than one payroll. But I can support this, but I'm just going to make the statement. It's not that I like this because it is a Band-Aid, but all in all, I think it's an okay process and I feel comfortable with it. I mean, and I don't like it just from the standpoint of I wish we weren't having to loan money, period. I mean, I think everybody does. So all in all, is it great? Yeah, yeehaw? No, definitely not. But I think it will work for at least the time being and see how it goes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Well, I've heard some good debate and discussion this evening, but one of the things I think we need to be reminded of is back in 2016, when prior to that, the nursing home was having financial difficulties. And at that point, we put a vote to the voters of Champaign County asking to increase the levy. That was defeated. So our backs are against the wall. We're talking about Band-Aids. And we're basically a county board, an ad hoc committee of the finance committee of the nursing home. So I think as we move forward, we do need to have some plan, because the outstanding balances are always increasing and the picture is not getting brighter. So I will support it, but I think we're probably coming to the end of the road on this issue.
Sorry, Mr. Harper.
Thank you. Going back to what Mr. Patterson said, it's strictly payroll, but what happens, I mean, a vendor can't come in and say, hey, I want more money. They're gonna have to live with what's ever left. Is that the way I understand that? Okay, all right. I don't like it, but I'm trying, yeah, okay, thanks.
Mr. McGuire.
One last shot. So what stops us from spending, paying vendors first, and to ensure that we don't have the money for payroll?
What is now biweekly AP that occurs in the same week as the payroll, as procedurally through the auditor, SAK, and this was in place before I came back, required all AP had to be approved by the administrator. I don't know if you all ever did that, but that was what was in place. So we have been following the process where SAK presents their recommendation for the payments, the auditor's office reviews it, I review it with the auditor's office, and we prioritize, and Pius is sometimes involved as well, and we prioritize and pay what we can pay from what's been submitted.
So when another vendor comes and says they want to sue us, and because they find out we have $250,000 sitting there, or an unlimited amount because we haven't set a limit, and that they don't have to go through a special meeting to get the $250,000, then what's the limit? It's only for payroll, but so any other dollar that comes into the nursing home is spendable. I mean, that's the point, that they can spend everything else and hold this for the payroll.
Yes.
Just to clarify part of the process, I hope this might help explain. In a payroll week, the payroll goes into county payroll accountant's office. It's part of county administrator's office, okay? She figures up what the total payroll is for the nursing home for all the different departments and funds, okay? That is generally done by Tuesday afternoon for a Friday payroll. So we would get, for example, today, the payroll for the nursing home is $227,000. In my office, we have the current balance. Current balance right now is $379,000 in the nursing home fund. So they have a surplus right now. That surplus is all they have for AP that week. Next week, they will not be paying any AP. That's what's been decided by county administration, the auditor's office, nursing home administration. So only that surplus after the payroll numbers are entered in by the payroll accountant, that is the only money that they will have available for AP every other week. Does that help you understand the process any?
We have a comment from the auditor as well. Yes.
I think nobody agrees more than I do with all of you, because I do crunch a few numbers in my lifetime here. But at the same time, one of the issues that we have is that Mrs. Busey and I, with the information that we received from SAK on the payables, has also tried to make sure that we had money in the account enough to at least cover some of the payroll, so where we wouldn't have to get the loan. which is one of the things why we would not be making AP payments or had not made an AP payment in a time where there was a payroll due the next week. So we try to coordinate the AP payments with a payroll week so we know exactly how much money we will have left over to make some of those AP payments. Now, this week is going to be a little trick of adjustment. We're trying to get caught up on a few things. As you can see by the report that Ms. Busey and SAK put together, we actually, in the month of February, paid some necessary items based on our settlement agreements and then just very little of the other. One of the things that hits us very hard at the end of the month, which is why this revolving loan, if you will be important, is because we also have another $56,000, $57,000 in health insurance due on top of a payroll, and it hits before their big dollars come in after the first of the month. So that's something we're also trying to make sure that we can pay our health insurance of our employees from their fund and also their payroll, and yet not burden the cash flow, knowing we will receive a lot of it during the next week. I don't like it any more than you all do, but I think it's better than coming in here every other day and kind of checking things out. I believe Mr. Farney's been really good with reporting what happens. I definitely will be in that vein to rattle him and say, did you get that report out to the board? But I do know that we have been very, very, very sensitive towards making sure we had payroll covered before we even tried to do some of the payables and juggling those payrolls at the same time.
Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Ms. Furtado. And that is where we're at, because it seems like we can't pay power bills, we can't pay phone bills, and I don't want to lose control of this. And you know, the payroll is important, and we have to pay it, but these things are constantly out of control. And I know it's a difficult responsibility to take care of, but we are responsible for it.
Seeing no other questions, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor say, do I need a roll call? Oh, okay, yeah, that's second. Okay, all right, we'll do a roll call.
Mitchell? Yes. Patterson?
Yes.
Petrie?
Yes.
Rector? No. Rosales? Yes. Storr? Yes. Summers? Yes. Tinsley?
Yes.
Weibel? Yes. Anderson? No. Clemens? No. Clifford? No. Cowart? Yes. Esri?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Harper?
No.
King? McGuire? No. Furtado?
Yes.
Oh, you got called last. It passes.
12-6.
Okay, so that motion passed. Moving on in the nursing home, put to point 3, I believe we already did that when we were over in the other packet. Is that correct, Deb? Okay, so now we are going to go to the, apologize as I get back on there, to the county administrator. So you're back in the blue packet on pages 10 through 13.
This is the final monthly budget report that you will receive for fiscal year 2017, subject to any changes that the auditor might make. I gave a more detailed report last month, so I'll just touch on some of the changes that have occurred. On the revenue page, there was an increase in use tax above and beyond what was projected. December collection, or December collections that were distributed to us in March were actually 24% increase over fiscal year December 2016. So significant increase in that distribution, which attributed to about $14,000 extra that you can see in this report. Also, on local government reimbursement, there was about $14,000 that I had not projected last month for Sheriff's Patrol. Under rent, utility reimbursements of about $16,000. And then earlier tonight, you approved a budget amendment to re-encumber funds for sheriff's vehicle that was actually deposited in 2017 for about $15,000. On the expenditure side, on the expenditure side, there was about $30,000 in increased expenditure in services. And on the summary page, thank you. On the summary page, you can see the revenue to expenditure difference is $81,000, so we are going to end fiscal year 2017 in the black. With a fund balance projection of $4.56 million, which equates to a 12.9% fund balance. As you know, the county board's recommended minimum fund balance is 12.5%. When you translate that to the 2018 expenditure budget, the ending fund balance as a percentage of the budget is 12.4% based on $36.78 million, which is currently budgeted for expenditures. As we've talked about multiple times tonight, the outstanding nursing home loans are $726,802. Those are due in 2018. So the county board is going to have to reconsider what it will do with those loans. Just for you to know, those are a balance sheet transactions, so they are not impacting our fund balance at this point. If those loans were to be forgiven in 2018, then you can see the impact to the fund balance, which would reduce it to $3.8 million and also result in an ending fund balance as a percentage of the expenditure budget of 10.2%.
Questions? Seeing none.
Yes, there are no changes from last month on the budget change report.
Thank you very much. So the next up, we have the semi-annual review of closed session minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to keep them closed.
Mr. Weibel.
Second.
Mr. Rosales, I heard first, so moved. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so I have nothing for a report, and
Wait, you need to go to the blue sheet again, number
I'm
2.
sorry, another blue sheet. Oh, sorry, but wait, that's under finance?
Other business under finance, yes.
Other business under finance, I'm sorry. I was thinking I was almost done. All right, so this is the renewal of the intergovernmental, that's where I am, agreement? Okay. All right, other business, renewal of the intergovernmental agreement between the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services and Champaign County State's Attorney. All right, sorry, I saw a move here by Mr. Anderson. Who said this? Mr. Peterson, second. Any questions or comments? Patterson, sorry. I've lost it. Let's just be honest. I've lost control of names at this point. I don't need. Anyway, I apologize. Any questions?
Well, I'll just say we approved it. You could say, didn't we? This is the money part of from DeFanis. Is this the money part of what we did earlier? Oh, no, okay.
No, it's different. This is
That's
different.
right. I'm sorry. My fault. I was thinking that was.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. sorry, I didn't mean to say no. That, I was saying there were no no's, please. Okay. All right, so designations of items to be put on the consent agenda. I have A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, B2, D2, and F2. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I really apologize for that. I meant F1 and F2.
F1 does, that's a committee thing, so
Oh,
it doesn't have
okay,
to.
okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I did not mean to say D2 out loud. All right. And with that, finance is done?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Furtado. We have one other item, that's approve of the closed session minutes of February 13, 2018. There's a motion to approve those minutes. Moved by Mr. Rosales, second by Mr. Esdre. Discussion, see none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Is there any other business? See none, we're adjourned.